You have been systematically conditioned across the entire trajectory of your human existence to believe that respect is a commodity purchased through the loud, exhausting deployment of words. The cultural architecture surrounding you has pounded a singular, deeply flawed script into your subconscious. If someone hurls an insult at your character, you are obligated to immediately fire back a counterstrike. If an individual intentionally tramples over your carefully constructed boundaries, you must aggressively and vocally put them back in their place. If someone deliberately or maliciously misunderstands your underlying intentions, the societal programming commands you to exhaust your vital cognitive energy, explaining your motives, justifying your life choices, and desperately launching an ideological defense to prove to an unworthy critic that you are fundamentally right. But let us peel back the layer of social politeness and look directly at the raw psychological reality. That is the ultimate foundational lie that has manufactured an absolute epidemic of emotionally fragile, hyper-reactive, and structurally hollow individuals. True power does not possess a loud, booming voice. True dominance never engages in a public emotional tantrum or an unhinged digital tirade. Unshakable, elite human strength is constructed exclusively within the heavy, absolute silence where your internal nervous system remains completely still, while their psychological framework collapses into absolute chaos. When we observe the broader landscape of human behavior, we find that humanity is split cleanly into two distinct evolutionary categories: those who react and those who maintain control. And by the unshakable, timeless laws of social hierarchy, the individuals who maintain absolute command over their own internal state will always effortlessly master and rule over the chaotic individuals who allow themselves to react. Let us dissect the exact mechanical timeline of what transpires inside your biological system. The exact second an individual targets you with a calculated provocation or a cold slice of disrespect, you feel an instantaneous, localized wave of biochemical heat surge up your spine and into your neck. Your chest immediately tightens, restricting your breath. Your jaw locks into a rigid, defensive clench. Your heart rate violently spikes as adrenaline and cortisol flood your cerebral cortex. At that exact microsecond, your primitive human ego wakes up from its slumber and begins screaming frantically into your conscious mind. Do not sit there and take this. Send the long paragraph. Fire back an angry reply. Launch into an emotional explanation. Execute a desperate attempt to prove to them that your pain is real, that your boundaries matter, and that your honor cannot be toyed with. But you must train yourself to step outside your physiology and watch this sequence with the cold detachment of a forensic scientist. Because this precise microsecond is exactly where the psychological chess match begins. The anatomy of the psychological hook. An insult or a calculated act of disrespect is never just a collection of random syllables, vocal frequencies, or dictionary definitions. It is a tactical hook. It is a highly engineered psychological lure thrown directly at the fortress walls of your consciousness for one specific predatory reason: to locate your structural fractures. The individual throwing the hook is desperately trying to see exactly where you break. They want to discover your psychological price tag. They want to map out your emotional triggers so they can figure out exactly what it takes to make you compromise your personal dignity and step out of your power. And the absolute millisecond you choose to take that bait, the exact moment you send the frantic 3-page text message, launch into a furious verbal counter-defense, or exhaust your breath trying to clarify your pure intentions, you have silently, completely surrendered the match. You have looked your attacker dead in the eye and explicitly communicated a devastating truth to their subconscious. Your casual, unvetted words possess enough systemic currency to completely hijack my internal biological framework and dictate my emotional state. In that single, unforced error, you have voluntarily entered a state of profound submission. You have handed them the remote control to your nervous system. The human world does not actually run on paper currency, corporate titles, or superficial academic degrees. Underneath the visible matrix of society lies an unwritten, unforgiving emotional hierarchy. The individual who maintains absolute, unyielding sovereignty over their own emotional state automatically dictates the terms of the immediate environment. Conversely, the individual who allows their emotions to be pulled out of them by an external force instantly forfeits their position at the apex of that hierarchy. Centuries ago, the brilliant and ruthless political strategist Niccolò Machiavelli stood inside the corridors of European power and carefully analyzed this exact interpersonal dynamic. He watched highly decorated kings fall from grace, elite military generals collapse on the absolute eve of a guaranteed victory, and powerful leaders systematically tear down their own empires. When Machiavelli isolated the variables, he discovered that these men did not fall because the external enemy was structurally superior or logistically stronger. They destroyed themselves because they were completely enslaved by their own immediate knee-jerk emotional reactions. An enemy simply had to find their specific wound, press the button, and watch them execute themselves through their own reactive chaos. Machiavelli identified a brutal, timeless law of human nature. A man who cannot master his own internal kingdom can be effortlessly turned into a puppet by absolutely anyone. Today, we are going to completely burn that psychological weakness out of your character. Today, we are going to master the ultimate, elite art of absolute, calculated non-reaction. Let us establish a strict boundary right now. This discipline has absolutely nothing to do with passive, cowardly retreat or hiding behind silence because you are terrified of conflict. This is about transforming your persona into something entirely unreadable, dense, and untouchable. We are not aiming for a soft, fragile, spiritual sense of calm. We are executing a cold, clinical, calculated stillness. It is the exact brand of psychological stillness that systematically deconstructs, disarms, and ultimately terrifies the person attempting to attack you. By the time you finish internalizing this complete masterclass, your brain will permanently stop processing insults as wounds. You will completely stop experiencing disrespect as personal pain. You will finally look right past the noisy performance of your provoker and see the situation for what it truly is: a desperate, poorly engineered trap. In the absolute moment you train your mind to spot the trap with absolute clarity, you permanently stop stepping into it. Section 1. The individual who explains loses all strategic leverage. Let us lay down a foundational law of spatial and psychological dominance that governs every boardroom, every relationship, and every conflict. In any human interaction, maximum structural power belongs entirely to the individual who remains completely still. To understand this dynamic on a deep, cellular level, let us visually analyze a modern courtroom. Look closely at the physical and structural architecture of the room. The judge sits highly elevated on a massive, heavy wooden bench. The judge is completely silent, physically still, and clinically observing the environment through a lens of absolute detachment. The judge does not offer frantic explanations for their presence, nor do they try to convince the crowd of their deep intelligence, their pristine character, or their legal worth. The judge explains absolutely nothing to anyone. Now shift your gaze down to the absolute center of the room. The defendant stands below the bench, sweating under the harsh lights, talking at a frantic, rapid-fire pace, frantically shuffling papers, presenting historical evidence, and begging with high emotional variance to be believed by the court. That is the raw, visual representation of human power. The individual who is forced to convince, justify, plead, and explain is always structurally beneath. The individual who simply observes, evaluates, and decides is always structurally above. The moment an individual steps into your personal orbit and questions your fundamental character, mocks the trajectory of your professional career, or passes unsolicited judgment on your lifestyle choices, you must realize that their objective is not an honest, intellectual search for truth. They do not care about objective reality. Their singular psychological goal is to force you into the submissive role of the defensive defendant. They want to make you sweat, make you talk fast, and make you feel an overwhelming internal pressure to prove your human worth to them. History provides us with the absolute masterclass in how to dismantle this specific trap. During the intense heights of the French Empire, Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte, a man accustomed to total, instantaneous submission from every human being in his presence, became profoundly enraged by his brilliant, detached diplomat, Charles Maurice de Talleyrand. In a desperate, ego-driven attempt to break Talleyrand's legendary composure, Napoleon cornered him in front of the entire elite political and aristocratic class of Europe. For 30 straight minutes, Napoleon launched into a vicious, highly personalized, venomous tirade. He publicly attacked Talleyrand's loyalty, mocked his physical appearance, questioned his manhood, and openly threatened his life. Napoleon wanted to see fear. He wanted to hear a frantic, desperate justification. He wanted to force the great diplomat onto his knees to beg for royal forgiveness in front of the empire. Talleyrand gave the emperor absolutely nothing. Throughout the entire 30-minute assault, Talleyrand did not blink. He displayed zero physical fear, offered zero defensive verbal replies, and flatly refused to provide a single word of explanation. He stood there like an ancient stone statue, meeting the emperor's furious, unhinged gaze with a cold, detached silence. When Napoleon finally stormed out of the chamber, completely exhausted from the sheer physical and mental exertion of his own unreciprocated rage, the room was dead silent. Talleyrand calmly adjusted the cuffs of his coat, turned to the gathered aristocrats, and uttered a single devastating sentence. "What a pity that such a great man is so ill-bred." With just 11 words and a massive mountain of preceding silence, the entire room instantly understood who truly held the structural, unshakable power in that empire. That is the devastating, viral execution of strategic non-reaction. The exact millisecond you begin explaining your life choices to a critic, you have voluntarily constructed a courtroom, placed them on the high bench of the judge, and stepped directly into the witness box as a submissive defendant. You are silently whispering to their ego, "Please analyze my evidence and grant me your permission to exist." A highly disciplined, powerful individual never seeks external validation for their decisions. He decides the path, he executes the movement, and he leaves a vacuum of heavy, unreadable silence behind his steps. The very next time an individual attempts to cross-examine your career trajectory, your financial status, or your personal lifestyle choices, do not reveal your tactical reasons. Do not unpack the contents of your beautiful mind for an unworthy critic. Do not discount your personal dignity by trading words with someone who has not earned the right to hear them. Look them directly in the eyes. Maintain total physical relaxation across your upper body. Force a deliberate pause for one heavy second, then effortlessly change the subject to something completely mundane, or simply turn on your heel and walk away. Your total refusal to engage will communicate a truth that is far more lethal than any insult. You are entirely irrelevant to my system, and your opinion possesses zero mass. There is absolutely nothing more agonizing to a toxic ego than the realization that they are completely irrelevant. Section 2. Starve the psychological predator with total emotional deprivation. Let us look directly into the dark mechanics of the people who specialize in interpersonal chaos, the emotional manipulators, the social instigators, and the chronic drama addicts. You must fundamentally understand that these individuals do not operate on the field of logic. They do not care about resolving a conflict, and they have zero interest in common sense. They are psychological predators, and they are hunting for a very specific type of sustenance: emotional food. Your visible anger, your leaked tears, your physiological frustration, and your long, frantic text messages of self-defense. That is their high-grade dopamine. Every single time they launch a calculated provocation at you, and you choose to give them a visible reaction, you are actively rewarding their predatory behavior. And in the foundational laws of behavioral psychology, any behavior that is consistently rewarded will inevitably repeat, escalate, and solidify. In behavioral psychology, there is a distinct phenomenon known as the extinction burst. To understand this concept on a deep level, look at a classic laboratory experiment. A lab rat is placed inside a cage with a mechanical lever. Every time the rat presses the lever, a pellet of high-grade food drops into the tray. The rat learns the script perfectly, but then the scientists permanently cut off the food supply. When the rat presses the lever and nothing drops, it doesn't immediately walk away. Instead, it enters a state of frantic, aggressive escalation. It begins pressing the lever harder, faster, and with increasing violence. It bites the lever, scratches the cage walls, and panics because the reliable system it used to control has completely stopped responding to its inputs. Human predators operate under the exact same biological loop. The moment you choose to permanently cut off their emotional food supply by remaining completely unbothered, toxic individuals will always enter a severe extinction burst. They will escalate the conflict. They will insult you harder, push your boundaries more aggressively, hurl wilder accusations at your character, and rewrite history. They will try to flip the script and attack your silence itself, screaming, "You've changed. You're completely cold. You're acting incredibly arrogant and acting like you're better than everyone." This precise moment is the ultimate crucible of character. This is the exact location where 99% of people lose their nerve, break down, and surrender. If you flinch here, if you allow their escalated attacks to finally provoke a defensive shout, a slammed door, or an emotional tear, you instantly restart the toxic cycle. You teach them exactly how high they need to raise the temperature next time to crack your armor. You prove to them that their lever still works if they just press it hard enough. But if you choose to remain absolutely still, if you allow their emotional storm to crash against your silence without moving a single muscle or blinking an eye, their internal operating system will experience a massive systemic crash. They will suddenly realize that their psychological remote control has completely stopped functioning. Their illusion of control evaporates and a profound internal panic begins to set in. When you find yourself in this scenario, I want you to step out of your emotions and observe them through the clinical lens of a cold scientist. Watch their frantic physical movements. Notice the subtle desperation creeping into their vocal tone. See the hunger and confusion swirling in their eyes. The calmer you remain, the more absurd, erratic, and utterly foolish they look to anyone watching the room. You are efficiently conserving 100% of your vital biological energy. They are rapidly burning through theirs in a chaotic, unguided explosion. Eventually, by the unshakable laws of human biology, they will experience a total energetic collapse. They will walk away completely exhausted, empty-handed, and psychologically defeated, while you remain entirely intact. Through this raw demonstration of absolute dominance, their subconscious mind learns a permanent evolutionary lesson. Attempting to provoke this specific individual is a highly dangerous, losing game. Section 3. Cultivate unpredictability as a lethal defensive weapon. Let us analyze how information is weaponized in interpersonal warfare. Professional manipulators and toxic opportunists are fundamentally data collectors. Every single day, they are quietly, invisibly studying your behavior. They are cataloging what makes you flinch, what topics make you defensive, what past failures make you insecure, and what words cause your face to flush with anger. Every time you allow yourself to react emotionally to an external event, you are handing them a highly detailed free map of your psychological vulnerabilities. Your visible anger tells them, "Congratulations, you have successfully struck a live nerve." Your immediate sadness tells them, "You have successfully located an unhealed emotional wound." Your rapid defensiveness tells them, "You have exposed a massive pocket of personal insecurity." You are literally providing your enemies with the exact blueprints required to dismantle your life, and you are doing it completely for free. But the exact moment you train your mind to display zero external reaction, you drop a massive, thick fog over the entire battlefield. You transform your persona into a completely unreadable black box. Look at the new mathematical equation of your life. Input, vicious insult right arrow. Output, absolute unmoving silence. Input, direct threat to output, a cold, detached calm. Stare. The moment you implement this standard, your adversaries are rendered completely blind, and human beings can never control what they cannot logically read. An individual who cannot be read is instantly processed by the human subconscious as a high-level danger. Unpredictable people feel incredibly expensive to cross. They create an atmosphere of intense psychological risk. When the people around you realize that they can no longer accurately predict how you will respond to a strike, their baseline arrogance transforms into extreme caution. Careful people attack significantly less. They choose simpler, softer targets. That is the execution of raw, silent dominance. If this psychological truth is currently cutting through your illusions and rewiring your perspective, I want you to take immediate ownership of it. Drop a definitive statement right now in the comments below. I stay silent. I stay dangerous. No long-winded paragraphs, no weak excuses, just that specific contract with yourself. And if you are ready to master the hidden laws of human psychology that society actively tries to keep hidden from you, hit the like button right now and subscribe to Silent Authority. This channel does not manufacture superficial content. We systematically rewire minds for ultimate sovereignty. Section 4. Every attack is a loud subconscious confession. If your long-term goal is to transform your character into something entirely untouchable, you must completely alter how you process incoming data. You must permanently stop hearing insults as objective statements about your identity. Because the raw clinical truth of the matter is this: an insult is almost never actually about you. It is an unvarnished psychological confession about the internal state of the person projecting it. Every single verbal attack you experience is a projection of internal rot. Every harsh word hurled at your life is a subconscious confession of personal inadequacy. Every judgmental statement whispered behind your back is simply the sound of profound fear leaking out of a broken ego. Human beings can only throw at the external world what they are currently failing to survive inside their own minds. The man who constantly mocks your massive ambition and tells you to stay realistic is not evaluating your capability. He is completely terrified of his own historical mediocrity. The individual who dismisses your hard-earned professional success as pure luck is desperately trying to construct a narrative to justify their own stagnation. The person who claims you are far too much or too intense is simply trying to mask their own complete lack of personal drive. The critic who labels your quiet composure as cold or arrogant feels deeply threatened by your total lack of emotional dependence on them. The individual who attacks your physical appearance, your financial status, your romantic relationships, or your lifestyle choices is not conducting a performance of dominance. They are hemorrhaging internal pain. The exact day your intellect fully internalizes this law of projection, your anger will permanently die, because you cannot experience anger toward a confession. You don't get furious at a wounded patient who is bleeding on the floor. You clinically analyze the location of the wound. A highly disciplined, powerful man does not fracture when an insult lands at his feet. He steps back and studies the trajectory. He removes his ego from the line of fire and elevates his perspective far above the immediate battlefield. He transitions from a vulnerable victim to an objective observer. He ceases to be emotional. He becomes entirely clinical. The next time an individual hurls a provocative comment in your direction, do not permit your heart rate to spike. Do not offer a counterstrike. Step into the role of a forensic psychologist and analyze the data. What specific words did their subconscious select? What exact angle of attack did their insecurity choose? How much toxic poison is leaking through their vocal variants? What is their micro-expression and body language revealing about their internal terror? Suddenly, the illusion of their dominance completely vanishes. You will see right through their aggressive armor and locate the exact fractures inside their psychology. This shift is precisely what makes you an incredibly dangerous adversary, because your eyes change. You no longer carry the panicked look of a hurt animal. You possess the cold, detached curiosity of a senior scientist studying a microscopic strain of bacteria under a lens. You are detached, you are cold, and you are entirely untouchable. The attacker will feel this shift in the room instantly. They will suddenly realize that instead of breaking you down, they have accidentally stripped themselves naked and exposed their deepest vulnerabilities to your gaze. That realization will completely shatter their psychological stability. Section 5. The physical architecture of the absolute pause. Let us be entirely pragmatic. Understanding the abstract theory of non-reaction while sitting comfortably in a quiet room is exceptionally easy. Executing it in real time when a toxic individual is screaming directly into your face is an absolute war. It is a war because in the immediate moment of an aggressive provocation, your primitive biology will attempt to betray your high-level intellect. Your heart rate will instantly spike to dangerous levels. Adrenaline will surge through your bloodstream. Cortisol will flood your cognitive centers, your muscles will violently tighten, and your vocal cords will begin to shake under the pressure. Your primitive reptilian brain will hijack your consciousness and scream one of two commands: fight or flight. But the powerful self-authored man completely rejects both options and executes a devastating third maneuver. The absolute pause. This is not a freeze of terror. It is not the paralysis of a victim. It is a highly calculated, heavily controlled, and profoundly terrifying pause. It is executed through three systematic biological steps. Step 1. Seize absolute control of the breath. The moment the verbal strike lands, you must consciously prevent yourself from taking a shallow, panicked gasp through your mouth. Slowly, deeply inhale exclusively through your nose, driving the oxygen deep down to expand your stomach rather than your upper chest. This intentional diaphragmatic breathing sends an immediate, powerful neurological signal to your brain's threat center. There is no actual survival threat in this environment. Your heart rate will instantly begin to stabilize, your vocal delivery will lock into a firm resonance, and your cognitive processing will remain sharp as a razor. Step 2. Systematically relax the jaw. When human beings feel threatened or insulted, our natural evolutionary reflex is to clench our teeth, tighten our jaw muscles, and round our shoulders forward to protect our vitals. You must consciously override this reflex. Deliberately drop your shoulders away from your ears. Completely relax the muscles around your jaw and face. Smooth out the lines on your forehead. By forcing your physical body to remain entirely loose, you are communicating an absolute psychological truth to your attacker's subconscious. You do not possess enough mass to threaten my system. Step 3. Master the gaze and the slow blink. Look at them directly, but do not glare. A glare is a defensive broadcast that reveals internal anger and emotional variance. A steady stare displays total, unyielding control. Focus your eyes directly on the bridge of their nose, right between their eyebrows. This tactical placement allows you to maintain intense, piercing eye contact without absorbing their frantic emotional energy. And then, execute the most dangerous physical move in interpersonal dynamics: the slow blink. In the animal kingdom, predators and prey alike will permanently widen their eyes when they sense immediate physical danger. They cannot afford to close their eyes for even a fraction of a second. A slow, deliberate blink is a biological signal that can only be executed by an apex entity that feels completely, utterly safe in its environment. When someone is actively yelling at you at maximum volume, and you look them dead in the eye and execute a slow, unbothered blink, you will trigger a profound subconscious panic inside their mind. Their ancient survival wiring will look at your lack of fear and whisper, "This individual is not afraid of me. Why are they not afraid?" Once you have established these 3 steps, hold the pause. Force a dead silence for 3 complete seconds. Count it out internally. 1.2.3. 3 seconds of absolute dead silence in the middle of a high-conflict interaction feels like an absolute eternity. That heavy vacuum of dead air completely strips the momentum away from the attacker. It forces them to hear the echo of their own unhinged words bouncing off the walls of the room. In 90% of cases, the pressure of this silence will cause the attacker to immediately backpedal. They will let out a nervous, high-pitched laugh, shift their weight uncomfortably, and try to soften the blow by saying, "Look, I was honestly just joking around with you." Silence creates a localized pocket of immense atmospheric pressure, and the human ego cannot survive inside it. If they are still standing there attempting to maintain their aggressive stance after the 3-second pause, you deliver one of 2 calculated finishes. You can simply turn your back and walk out of the room without saying a word. Or you can look at them with a completely flat, deadpan expression and ask one cold question. "Are you finished?" That is it. 0 sarcasm in your delivery. 0 underlying anger in your tone. 0 emotional variance. Speak with the flat, clinical indifference of a machine reading a baseline weather report. This specific brand of calm articulation creates an intense, lingering intimidation that screaming could never hope to replicate. Human beings naturally fear what they cannot emotionally break. Section 6. Become a ghost inside the social machine. Let us elevate this philosophy to its ultimate zenith. The long-term goal of Stoic mastery is not to implement a series of clever tactical tricks or to put on an elaborate performance of acting unbothered. The ultimate objective is to systematically restructure your intellect until you actually become completely unbothered. You must transform your consciousness into a ghost inside the social machine. To achieve this elite state of psychological sovereignty, you must completely and ruthlessly devalue the collective opinions of the masses. The next time you feel a sudden surge of anxiety regarding someone's negative perspective of your life, step back and ask yourself a brutal question. Why do I actually care about the mental output of this specific machine? Look at the average human being walking through modern society. They possess zero control over their own baseline minds. They are completely enslaved to their immediate biological impulses. They are severely addicted to cheap digital dopamine. They are chronically trapped in toxic behavioral cycles. They are directly controlled by corporate algorithms, corporate news broadcasts, and transient emotional moods. They are literal sleepwalkers stumbling through their lives from birth to the grave. So let's be entirely logical. Why should a professional sleepwalker possess the sovereign authority to dictate your internal emotional state? Why should an individual who cannot even control their own basic daily habits be handed the keys to your personal peace of mind? Epictetus delivered the ultimate truth to his disciples. If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your own mind is complicit in the provocation. You must internalize that reality. Every time you allow yourself to get hurt by a critic, you are actively cooperating with them. You are assigning immense value to their voice. You are opening the gates of your fortress and granting them explicit permission to injure your soul. The exact day you fully realize that the vast majority of people are deeply flawed, chaotic, and fundamentally lost, their insults will instantly transform into harmless, empty air. You will permanently stop seeing personal enemies on the field, and you will begin seeing malfunctioning machines. If a kitchen toaster accidentally burns your slice of bread, you do not launch into a furious, 20-minute emotional argument with the appliance. If a stray dog barks aggressively at your car as you drive past, you do not roll down the window to explain your life choices to the animal. You simply understand their inherent nature, accept the baseline mechanics of the world, and continue moving toward your destination. That is the execution of ultimate Stoic detachment. When you reach this level of psychological mastery, you aren't ignoring people to childishly manipulate their feelings. You are ignoring them because they have become entirely irrelevant to your system. They are nothing more than background static on a radio channel you don't listen to. And that realization is an incredibly terrifying form of power. When your internal kingdom remains completely untouched by external chaos, you become entirely immune to psychological blackmail. No one can track your movements, no one can trigger your reactions, and no one can destroy your public reputation through your own erratic behavior. You have officially become a ghost, uncuttable, unburnable, and completely unbendable. You can only be observed, feared, and deeply respected by the world around you. Always remember, the loudest individual in the room never wins the war of dominance. The man who rules his own soul in absolute silence is the only one who becomes king. Walk steady, build your fortress in total privacy. Let your silence do the heavy lifting.